Today, we're unpacking a really fundamental question, I think, for anyone curious about how the internet actually works. What's the real difference between front end, back end, and full stack development?
Yeah, that's exactly our mission today. We really want to break these concepts down, use some simple, clear examples, hopefully help you get a quick handle on not just what they are, but why they're important in web development overall. It's about understanding those key distinctions.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start where you, the user, experiences things first. The front end. I guess you could say it's basically everything users see and interact with directly on a website.
Right.
Like when you land on a web page, every button you might click, the menus, the text you're reading, the colors,
hmm
any cool animations, the whole layout, that's all front end stuff, kind of the face of the website.
Exactly. And it's built primarily using three core technologies.
Right.
There's HTML, which is sort of the structure, like the bones of the page. Then CSS that handles the style. Think colors, fonts, layout, making it look good. And finally, JavaScript. That's what adds the interactivity, makes things happen when you click or type or scroll.
Okay, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the big three for the front end.
Right. And very often developers use libraries too. Things like React or Vue.js. Think of them as like pre-built toolkits. They help build complex features faster, like interactive forms or dynamic updates, without starting from absolute scratch. They've really changed how we build interfaces, making them feel super responsive.
You know, I bet a lot of people listening, maybe even me included, have sort of dabbled in front end without fully realizing it. Like if you've ever tried to change the style on a web page, maybe messed with colors or made something clickable, that counts, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's front-end development right there. Even simple stuff.
I remember my first try, it was a total mess visually. But seeing something change instantly on the screen was, well, pretty cool. Is that instant feedback a big part of it?
Definitely. That immediate visual result is, I think, a huge draw. It's why it's often a great place for people to start learning.
Right. So we've covered the visible part, the stuff you click and see, but then there's like all the machinery working
Oh,
behind it, yeah?
yeah.
What's that magic behind the curtain? What's it actually doing? That must be the back end.
That's it, exactly. The back end is where all the, let's call it heavy lifting happens that you don't see directly. It's kind of the brain of the operation. It deals with things like managing data, running the servers the website lives on,
Oh,
handling
like
API,
UPIs, those are like the messengers between different software, right?
precisely, like waiters taking orders and delivering data. And crucially, the back end talks to databases to store and retrieve information. It also handles things like user authentication, security, complex logic, making sure everything runs smoothly and securely. Think
Yeah.
about logging into a site. You type your username and password.
Yeah.
It's the back end that takes that, goes, checks it against a database, and says, yep, this person's alive in, or nope, try again. That's a classic back end job.
Got it. So just like the front end has its main tools, the back end must have its own set of common languages and technologies.
It sure does. You'll often hear about languages like Node.js, Python, or PHP being used on the back end. Each has its own strengths.
Huh.
Node.js is great for speed. Python is super versatile, especially with data. PHP is still very common for websites. And then for databases where all the information is stored, common ones are things like MongoDB or MySQL. The choice really depends on what the application needs to do with its data.
Okay, that makes sense. Front end is what you see, back end is the engine room running it all. So what about someone who can do, well, both?
Right. That leads us nicely to the full stack developer. This is someone who's comfortable working on both sides, the front end and the back end.
So they bridge the gap?
Exactly. They can build the entire flow of a web application. They understand how to create the user interface you click on, and they know how to set up the server, the database, and the logic that makes it all work together. It's about seeing the whole picture, how data moves from what you see to where it's stored and processed.
Like an architect and the construction manager rolled into one.
That's a good way to put it. And you often hear about specific stacks or combinations of technologies they use. A really popular one right now is the MERN stack. That stands for MongoDB.
The database we mentioned?
Yep. Then Express.js, which is a framework that helps organize the back-end code, often used with Node.js. Then React for the front end.
The library you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. And Node.js itself, which runs the JavaScript code on the server. MERN. It's a complete package designed for building modern web apps.
MERN.
Got it. MongoDB, Express, React, Node.js.
Okay, so this definitely brings up a big question for anyone listening who's thinking about learning this stuff. Where should you start? Front end, back end? Or just try to jump at a full stack?
That's a really common question. And, based on what most experts say, and frankly, my own experience seeing people learn, I generally recommend starting with the front end if you're a beginner.
Why is that?
Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's visual. It's
Yeah.
interactive. You write some code, you immediately see something change on your screen. That quick feedback is super motivating. It helps
Yeah.
build confidence early on.
That clicks. Yeah, seeing your work come to life right away. So the idea is get comfortable at the front end first, build that foundation. And then once you've got a good handle on that, you can start exploring the back end, moving towards becoming full stack.
That's often the natural progression, yeah. Understanding how users interact with the interface really helps inform how you build the behind-the-scenes stuff effectively later on.
Okay, great. So let's quickly recap what we've covered in this deep dive. We've got the front end, that's everything you, the user, sees and interacts with. The visual part, then the back end, that's all the behind the scenes logic, the servers, the databases, making it all function, and full stack development, that's mastering both sides to build